Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking every Ameri-Toku series. And by every, I just mean there's a chance there's some that exist that either I haven't seen or I don't know about, or both, which I guess would make sense. But this is a list of every Ameri-Toku series I've seen. Now, what does that mean? Figure it out yourself, moron. I'm just kidding. But you know, it's the series, like, more so in that bubble of time where we did Toku-esque adaptions or Toku-inspired things that mostly happened in the 90s. And there's, as of the time I'm recording this, there's been a lot of discussions about, like, Toku in the West and its appeal and stuff like that. And it got me thinking a lot about the series we've done, and I think the biggest Toku boom was like back when Power Rangers happened and we started doing a bunch of them. And obviously there's been some different circumstances since then, but I thought it would be interesting to rank the ones that I have seen. So this is only a list of the ones I've seen. And also I have a very specific, not very specific, but a specific consideration for what I consider Toku, because I know Toku is technically just special effects. So you could say like Avengers and Star Wars are. But I like to use the term to represent the very specific style, because you're wanting to give credit to the fact that the style of Kamen Rider is different than the style of the Avengers. Just like, even though anime and, you know, mean just animation, people will use that style to say like, this is inspired by anime. So, just in case people are like, why isn't Doctor Who or The Office on there? Because it's Tokusatsu. You're gonna know what Toku is when you see it. But anyway, let's get started. So first of all, I don't know if this counts as an honorable mention or just, it's just a mention. It's because it's something that I know of that I'm sure people will ask why it's technically not on the list, but is Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters. I am going to be honest with you, I have never seen this show at all. I've seen a picture a couple times and that's it. Like, I legitimately did not know this existed until I got it. I legitimately did not know this existed until I got into the Toku community. And I like pretended for a bit like, oh yeah, I saw that. No, never. Like, this was like a Mandela effect. Like, Barry, what have you done? You changed the timeline. I've never seen it. Even since I've known about it, I've never even sought out a clip as of this recording. I've seen a picture a couple times that have just come across my way. So the reason it's not on this list, and technically I guess is at the bottom, but it doesn't deserve to be ranked because I can't give an opinion, but I've never seen it. Anyway, coming in at the bottom of the list, and this might be a hot take, but I gave this a lot of consideration, and this isn't because I necessarily dislike it or have any negative feelings towards it, but is Mystic Knights of Tir-na-nog. And there's a lot of things I like about this show, but the reason I put it so low on the list was it's the one that I've watched the least and have the least memories with and the least affection for, even though I do have affection for it. Like, in terms of, it was an original show. It wasn't based off any Toku. And you know me, I'm all about that. I like that when they do their own thing. And I love that they tried to do their own thing here that was kind of Armored Power Rangers-esque. Actually very much reminding me of those Armored Ranger, like, archaic designs they just did in the comics. And I like that. And I did watch it when I was younger, and I actually have a couple toys. But in terms of all the ones that I actually have experience with, it was the one that I watched the least and enjoyed the least. Again, not in an overall negative way, and I wanted to rank it higher because I had respect for it being original, but I didn't want to fake affection for it, and this is ultimately a personal list. But I just want to be clear, I don't think it's the worst, and maybe if I sat down and fully watched these back-to-back more recently, then it would be higher, but just as of right now. Because that's what I forgot to say about this, is this is all based off of mostly fondness and nostalgia, and I have rewatched a couple of these, but not that recently. Maybe I'll do a revisit of this after I do a rewatch or some sort of retrospective series where I rewatch these and review them, but right now I had to put it at the bottom. After that is Masked Rider. Now initially when I was making this list, I had this at the bottom and Tir-na-nog above it, but I felt like I was being like fake, like, oh, I'm pretending I really love Mystic Knights when I only liked it okay. And I didn't want to have Masked Rider at the bottom because I think this series often gets a lot of hate and it's kind of the butt of the joke, and you know, it's not that great. Like, a lot of these shows, to be honest, aren't that great by normal show standards. And it is one of the weirder ones in terms of the stuff they did, like just of the whole backstory of everything. Not the backstory, like, I actually really like the mythology of this, but just the setup of the series and the characters and Furbus, it's all very weird, and I've made fun of it too, it's fun to do. But I also have a soft spot for the series for a couple reasons. I mean, like I just mentioned, I actually really like the mythology of the way it works. It is also weird that they set it up to be this very connected thing to Power Rangers, almost like they were building a universe, and then they didn't. I don't even know the reason behind that. It's probably somewhere. Regardless, that's another weird element. But I like the general mythology of it. If I remember right, it almost even feels like a Black Panther type thing where each prince or king or whatever gets an armor, which is kind of cool. So I did like the general mythology of it, and you know, it had some good classic 90s Toku fun that I enjoyed before I knew what Toku was. But the main reason I have a soft spot for it, outside of just liking elements of the ideas, is because I watched this when I was younger and had a familiarity and fondness for it, it was what opened the door for me to get into Kamen Rider. Like when I got into Sentai and I saw that people also watch Kamen Rider, the reason I wanted to check it out was because I was familiar with it from being a Masked Rider fan when I was younger. Even though I would say this is probably my second least watched, like, which is funny because I obviously had enough of an attachment to have some toys and didn't want to check out Kamen Rider, but it was one of my lesser watched ones. But I wanted to give it a soft spot because I have a soft spot for it in general because there's things I like, but also it was the way that I was able to get into Kamen Rider. Coming up next is VR Troopers, and this was a weird one because I would say amongst all of the ones on this list, outside of like MMPR, obviously Power Rangers was the most watched, and then Beetleborgs was close second. This was probably my third most watched, like the one that I watched the most episodes of when I was younger, the one that I rewatched the most, that I had like the most toys for. I still remember like always playing with the basic figures and the little, I think it was a Burger King or McDonald's toy of the transformation device. And so I have probably some of the most fondness for this outside of MMPR and Beetleborgs from those memories. And also it's got an amazing theme song, I think right up there with the MMPR theme song and the Beetleborgs theme song. I think it's a great catchy theme song, very much in line with that. And again, another series where I very much do enjoy the concept, and even when I got older I actually appreciated the way they weaved together the various Metal Hero series and did this virtual reality concept. It was all pretty neat. But that being said, this series is harder to rewatch when you get older. To be honest, most of the ones on this list are harder to rewatch in full. It's more fun to watch for maybe like 3 or 4 episodes of like, hey, remember this, get those warm nostalgic feelings, and then you get sick of it. And the last time I rewatched this, or parts of it, was years ago for the old RR podcast, and it was like a tough watch. I remember, like, again, the first handful are fun to rewatch, but then after that, I just remember it being a tough watch, so it moved a little bit down on the list. After that, actually, is Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, which I have a soft spot for this series. I think I have a little bit more fondness for it than VR Troopers, just because it always feels like the black sheep or the forgotten one of the ones of this era. I feel like it's talked about the least or remembered the least, and I felt that way to a degree even when I was younger. I feel like amongst like the other kids my age, most of them knew Beetleborgs or Power Rangers or VR Troopers when they were out, but nobody really knew this one, and it felt like this secret one that I just liked on my own, and it feels like it's forgotten now. And it was kind of unique amongst them in terms of the concept, because it was very much more Ultraman-esque. And in a way, it's surprising I just can't get into Ultraman. Kind of like Masked Rider opened me up to Kamen Rider, but this didn't open me up to Ultraman. I know it's not exactly that, but the suit is very much like it. And I always just loved the suit. I don't know why. Still, like, I bought the figure art for it because I just like the way the suit looks. I think because it, like, hit the same buttons as, like, the Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, VR Troopers type of stuff, but it just felt different. And I just felt this series was also a little bit unique of a black sheep that I had a soft spot for. Maybe it's not that way at all. Maybe it's just the corners of the fandom I've seen, and maybe people in other corners of the fandom talk about it a lot. Plus, it starred Matthew Lawrence, who's one of the Lawrence brothers, who was in Jumping Ship, the sequel to the greatest movie of all time, Horse Sense. Now, at the runner-up spot, which actually is my favorite of the like 90s era ones, is Beetleborgs. Borg! Blast! Like, I unironically still love this show. Like, yeah, it's a little bit dated. It can be hard to rewatch in parts, but I think it's far and away the easiest one to revisit. Like, even more so than MMPR Season 1. Like, not even kidding. I can rewatch Season 1, Season 2 of Beetleborgs way easier than Season 1 of Power Rangers. I think it's because they go even further all in on the ridiculousness so that it's just kind of fun to be in that vibe. But I always just gelled with this series, you know, so much about it, just the idea of getting to become your favorite comic book superhero for the kids, and, you know, the suits I always just really liked, the style of it, you know, the incorporation of stuff like Hillhurst and the Hillhurst Monsters and Flabber, you know, being like someone that loves the fall horror Halloween thing, that as an extra layer of enjoyment. So much of about like that series just hit for me in terms of what they did. I also loved stuff like, we basically did our own version of Green with Evil with the Shadow Borg, except it was like, instead of, you know, Tommy becoming the White Ranger, it's like you had the Evil Ranger and then the White Ranger that was good, except with the Borgs. It's almost like if they did a version of PR where you had the Green Ranger and they created the White Ranger to fight him. And I think that it's the MMPR white suit and the White Blaster Beetleborg, who I think is on the shirt, there he is, that is my genesis of love of white Toku suits, and it's still one of my favorite like Toku related suits. And I loved that arc. I loved the transition between Beetleborgs and Beetleborgs Metallics feeling very much Zeo-like. There was just so much I just really did like about this series. Kind of a maybe hot take, I think I generally see people like Beetleborgs Metallics more, and while I do like it, I just generally enjoy the first season a little bit more, but I just always liked it when I was younger. And also, again, when I found out about Toku and how he did all this stuff, I had like an even greater appreciation for how like creatively nuts this series was. It's almost like the magnum opus of Saban's way of thinking back in the day, where you do stuff like, oh, aliens or Ninja Sentai, let's make them alien fish people. Oh, like this Mecha B-Fighter series, B-Fighter series, let's give them a haunted house as a base. So I just absolutely love it. But my number one favorite is Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. Together we can fight the fight, let's ride. That's the whole title of the series. No, I just really like this series. Oddly enough, similar to Ryuki, it felt like it takes a while to get going. Like the first batch of episodes aren't as good and are a little bit generic for me, but then once it gets going, it's really quite good. And there's admittedly some awkward, stiff acting and stuff, but in general, once I was on board, I was on board, especially by the time that this, finished airing, or, I finished the series. I did watch it live, but I finished Ryuki, so I was able to have an appreciation for, it was one of my favorite styles of adaptation, where they basically just wanted to tell their own story. They took some of the loose structure of the idea of the riders fighting, and were able to make use of footage of like, okay, this footage works for what we're doing, but at the end of the day, their story was important, and it was very different, and I liked the story that they told with it. Like, I loved the twist that happened once you introduced Case as Kamen Rider Siren, making her much more of a prominent character. Even stuff like having our main character become Kamen Rider Onyx almost in a black suit Spider-Man-esque fashion for almost the whole second half of the series, and then you have Dragon Knight be this sort of turncoat character. There was just a lot of twists and turns I didn't expect, and I really liked that series, and it's unfortunate it didn't do as well. Like, I think it's a bunch of circumstances, the way it aired, and it was kind of on the tail end of Saturday morning TV, where that was more of a regular thing. Not to mention that unfortunate uphill battle where not everybody, but a lot of people that saw this just like, oh, it's a Power Rangers ripoff. And so I do wonder if there's any circumstances where this aired somewhere right where we might be getting these, because I legitimately would have loved to seen the team do a follow-up to this or other adaptations, and I just really like it a lot. I have a soft spot for it. I hope we get a DVD release. Also, very quickly, lastly, I did forget to mention in terms of like the intro of this video, obviously, technically speaking, my number one favorite Ameri-Toku is Power Rangers, but this isn't about Power Rangers, so this was kind of more about that, so in case people were also wondering why I didn't rank that. But that's it for this video. I had fun making this one. Let me know what your guys' favorite Ameri-Toku series. Was there any I forgot that either, like, for whatever reason, my brain didn't remember from the 90s, or that I didn't know about? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.